Welcome to Redbeard Radio. I'm Brian Keith, and today we are talking with a guy who has 8 kids and just celebrated his 25th wedding anniversary. Brett Gilliland, welcome to Redbeard Radio.
Thank you, Brian. I appreciate that. And yeah, I don't know that I'm usually known for those two things, but it's fun to it's fun to talk about those things today.
Well, it is because I know something of your professional accomplishments with elite entrepreneurs, and when you worked at Keep and helped grow Keep to a much bigger company, and then now you work with all these 7 and 8 figure entrepreneurs to grow their businesses, and you have a beautiful body of work there. And today, I want to think about the backstory to that. You've been married for 25 years. Now, when you started at Keep, what year was that?
I started with them in 2008, and we spun the elite business out 10 years later in 2018. So I was there for 10 years.
Okay, so you've now been between when you started at Keep and now when you're running Elite Entrepreneurs, that's slightly over half the time you've been married. Am I doing that math right?
Yeah, you're right. Yep.
Okay, when you look at these last 12 years and you compare it to your first 13 years, and you think about what are you doing really well now and doing notably better than you did in your first 12 years, when you look at that balance of incredible work productivity at the same time as honoring your wife and honoring your kids and honoring your own spiritual vision, what strikes you as the second half Brett is really doing much better than that first half Brett?
Well, some of that it's hard. It's a little bit of apples and oranges, and I'll explain.
Mm-hmm.
The first 12, 13 years was welcoming those 8 kids that you talked about, right? And it was
Mm-hmm.
chaos. It was just nuts. Um, now our youngest, we have twins at the end. So our youngest are just turning 13. They were born the year that I started working at then Infusionsoft, now Keep.
Wow.
And so it's a little different being with we have 5 teenagers and a few adults now. That's a different story than 8 kids when your oldest is 10 and a half, right? It was just different.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll try to answer that question, even though I feel like they're two different lives that we were sort of living. In both cases, though, I would say one key to making it all happen is getting clarity with both your work partners, right? Like the people that you got to work with, and how we're going to work together, and where I have some boundaries, and life partner with my spouse, some boundaries around when I'm going to be home and when I'm not going to be looking at texts or responding to emails, because we were in a high growth situation at Infusionsoft, right? And it was like
Mm-hmm.
kind of always on, but when I got home from work at the end of a busy day, I would put that aside, and it was just family time for at least 3 hours. From about, I mean, 6 to 9 was kind of the window, right? And maybe it really stretched from 5:30 to 9:30, depending on the day. But
Mm-hmm.
somewhere between 3 and 4 hours of I'm a family man, and then magically, if there were urgent things that needed my attention at 9 or 9:30, I might turn back on work. But that family, keeping things together at home time and investing in my key relationships, that was really critical then, and I mean that continues to be important as I'm a business owner now.
Tell me about the relationship between how much time you got to yourself. And by yourself, I mean not work and not family stuff. When you look at how much time you've had there, I'm curious about your experience of that over the years.
Yeah,
And also, and your answer might be none, but also how that compares to your wife's experience of having time to herself.
yeah, uh, fascinating comparison again. So time for myself, pretty minimal, I would say. Over the last few years, I've actually gotten better at that. And here's when I take the time. I take the time first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
So, right when I get up, I'm a person of faith or religion. I have beliefs around a higher power. And my first action of every day is to kneel in prayer. So I have quiet time just by myself, with my version of who God is, and I speak to God for a little bit of time there to start my day.
Mm-hmm.
And then I I access sources of truth. So again, there's a body of scripture that I believe in, and I read from those passages, and I try to apply time proven principles to my life today. How do I learn from what these people did, and God's dealing with people across time? How do I learn from that and apply some of those core truths or principles in my life today? And that just helps me stay centered. So between some prayer time and some scripture time, that's how I start my day. And um, it's an individual activity. Now with older kids, some of whom are up earlier than others, they may be in and out of the space where I'm having some of that refuel time. Um, they're not where I'm at when I pray. When I pray, I'm right by my bed, and then I wander out into our family room area, and there may be kids coming in and out of me spending time alone studying, but they see that, and it's an example for them, and they do some of that themselves. But that's alone time. So that's really the bulk of my alone time. Those 20 to 25 minutes in a morning. It's not a lot, but it's something that I continue to do because it helps me stay centered.
How rock solid, Brett, is that commitment as compared to work commitments, date night with your wife, working out, or anything else?
Oh, that's rock solid. I want to say you could set your watch to it. It's not precisely the same time every day, but it's the same motion. I get out of bed, I go right to prayer. I get up from prayer, I go right to having a bowl of cereal or something while I study. So that's just every day, every day.
It's interesting to think about, with what I know of you, how we could describe you. And we could describe you as, oh, well, you're an entrepreneur, or oh, you're a coach to entrepreneurs who helps them grow their businesses, or oh, you've been married 25 years, or oh, you're the father to 8, or oh, you helped Infusionsoft grow to this certain size. And from the story you just told, Brett, I think we could describe you differently as, here's a man who starts every day in prayer. And when you hear that description of you as compared to all these other descriptions that are accurate, how does that thought about just defining you, like Brett is a man who starts every day in prayer, how does that feel to you?
Well, to me, it feels right. I would say my faith or my belief, my connection to God is first, and so when you hear principles of highly effective people from Stephen Covey, and he says, "Put first things first." I literally
Mm.
do that in my day. That's first. And I know that's not for everyone, and there's no judgment around whether or not you do that or anybody else that I know and admire. But for me, that is the way that I stay connected to what matters most for me. And I think that that's part of actually something you haven't asked about, but I've kind of hinted to. That's part of, I believe, my success in my marriage and my success with trying to raise children successfully. In my any success I may have had in work, to me, I would put it all back to what I put as first. So first things first for me allows everything else to happen.
It strikes me that it's a context question, that there is a context to go make $1 million, which says the point is the $1 million. And there's a different context that says you're a man of prayer who is married. You also happen to have children. And then somewhere down that list of what matters to you is go make $1 million. But there's a context so that you're not overly invested in the pursuit of cash. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's completely right. And if I have to make a trade off, and all of us have to make trade offs, the trade offs I make have to do with what level of, um, I guess, what I'll call worldly success or
Mm.
measurable financial success. What level of that do I want to have in exchange for the other things that are important in my life? And so never will that outweigh in importance, the pursuit of more or the pursuit of financial wealth or freedom. Never will that outweigh the importance of God and family for me. And yet that money, those funds allow me to do more in terms of my service, whether that's in a church setting or just personal, how I can help other people around me, and especially and including my family. Right. So I see them both as working together, but there's an order to things.
What do you think it does for your wife to see you have this level of spiritual discipline every day?
Well, I don't know about you. I know you married recently, and
2 months.
yeah, which is awesome. 2 months going on 25 years, Brian. That's how
Yeah.
you do it. So here's the way I see it. I feel like I married up, right?
Uh
So
huh.
most guys I know kind of marry up. I don't know the other way around too often. So, and I don't mean up in terms of financial status or up in terms of social status or anything like that. I just mean like at the core, she's a better person than I am. So I'm trying. I think she inspires me, and I hope that I inspire her in some ways. But we're definitely a team, and um, she's every bit my equal, if not my better, in terms of the trying to be well and whole personally, so we can do all the things that we try to do.
What do you do to support her having her own development time, her own alone time, whatever that looks like?
Yeah,
Because you're busy, man. You got 8 kids, a business. You have so much going on, but you're able to get up early. And I'm curious, is there a similar thing where she's able to get up early, or is her time after the kids have gone to bed and you've gone back to work, or what does that look like?
yeah. And you kind of alluded to this question earlier, and I didn't get to comment. So I'm glad we're back around to it. So it's interesting, and in our family, and because of the demands of having 8 kids, and I know there's lots of ways to go about this, but for us, we chose for my wife to be home. She wanted to be home and be a mother and take care of our home and all of the demands of, and you can imagine the logistics with all these people and places they're trying to go. And she's an operational genius, actually, but
Mm-hmm.
she employs all of that genius here in our home. So I get the opportunity to go and interact with others. I get a little bit of a separate identity. Like her work doesn't stop, right? It's always on.
Yeah.
She's always in it. And so it may sound a little imbalanced. There's not a lot of alone time for me to go and hang out with the guys because I do that through my work. Not to
Yeah.
hang out with the guys, but to go hang out, like go interact with other people, go be away from home a little bit. And she doesn't have that. So
Mm-hmm.
in our relationship, I find ways for her to leave the house as often as I can. So
Mm.
this morning, she has a friend here in the neighborhood. They like to walk in the mornings. And she said, "Hey, I'm going to go walk with Sherry. Does that work?" I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I did all the school preparation stuff this morning. Um, and it doesn't always go as well as when mom's involved when I do it myself, but it's manageable. We do it. And so she went and walked for an hour, and I took care of things at home. Last week, she participated in a book club one evening. So she has a monthly book club that she does in the evenings. And so I take care of things at home while she goes and does that. Once a year, she goes to a week long conference. So I saw you last at a Keep conference, Icon, right? A couple of weeks
Mm-hmm.
back. And she doesn't have work conferences, but she has personal growth things that she wants to do and loves to do. And so there's an annual conference that she goes to for several days. And so I arranged my life as a business owner to enable her to go be away for that week.
Now,
So there's lots of things that we do. I could go on.
how long did it take you guys to figure out this right balance? You've been married 25 years. You're describing this beautiful system that works. And I know that sometimes we look at people who are farther along a path than we are and say, wow, look at that great system. They're so much better. They're so good. When sometimes the reality was you tried 100 wrong ways until you finally figured out what works. So I'm curious, was it your first year of marriage where you figured out you needed your prayer time in the morning, she needed to go off with her girlfriends regardless?
No, of course not. And even though we're the same people on our driver's license, right, or our social security card, we have the same identity for those 25 years. As people, we've both changed over those 25 years. So it's absolutely not the case that it's you figure it out once and then you just repeat for 25 years, and that would probably get a little dull anyway, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
So as each new addition came to the family, or as my professional career took a turn, right? All along the way, we are having to make adjustments, just like in our businesses. Anytime we're growing, there's new things that you got to figure out, new rhythms. Even if the core principles are the same, how it manifests might be different. And so it's a constant collaboration. I mean, the word partner, I don't know if it's strong enough, right? But in a marriage relationship, there has to be this total connection, where you're figuring it out together as it shifts along the way, and it does shift. It does change.
I'm thinking about where are you going to look, or what's life going to look like when you've been married for 50 years?
Yeah, I can't wait. Actually,
You describe a balance. You're in this beautiful balance right now. Now, of course, you still have kids at home. Uh, but I'm curious if the balance, if you and your wife see like, oh yeah, in about 50 years, we sort of want to have a similar thing where she goes off with her girlfriends during the week and you have your quiet time in the morning for prayer. Is that the good life?
I think we'll do more together outside of our home. I think we have aspirations to go and serve together outside of our home. Right now, we do a lot of serving within our home, and we have for our oldest is 24 now. For the last, well, he'll be 24 in about 6 weeks. So for the past almost 24 years, we've worked a lot together in the home. And
Mm-hmm.
and as our kids leave, I don't know. I like to think that we'll work together more outside of the home. We'll find ways to serve and contribute in the community or in our church congregation. Or I don't think we'll do business life together. I think business is a great vehicle to provide what our family needs and provide something meaningful for me to do. But I don't really see us doing that together later. I think we'll do more service oriented, or like bucket list and self actualization types of activities together when we're older.
That's beautiful. And now that we've gotten all the simple, easy questions out of the way, for an entrepreneur listening to this and they hear how you and your wife have organized your lives and they think, me and my spouse, we're not at that level of function of having the right kind of time, the right frequency of time to go pursue your own individual things. What kind of question, Brett, do you think a person could ask their spouse to get the conversation started, to really try to elicit what those needs are from their spouse?
Well, I think you are really great at asking questions, and so I think you would ask a better question. Here's the counsel or the advice, right, or the tip that I would give. I would say, and this is going to sound a little I don't know, nerdy or geeky, coming from somebody. My whole business is helping business owners figure out how to lead their organizations effectively, right?
Mm-hmm.
I would say just create a pattern of, and like I said, this is the wrong term for in a family situation, but like a meeting rhythm, right? Like
Mm.
create a pattern for when you're going to coordinate on task level stuff and the
Mm-hmm.
frequency around that. So my wife and I have a weekly pattern of looking at the week together, and then a nightly pattern of looking at the next day together, right? So we're always doing this operational thing of how do we keep track of everything, and she takes the lead on that. I mean, that's her core thing, but she doesn't do it without me, and I try to support her in that, right? And then a little less frequently, and maybe that's monthly and sometimes quarterly, maybe even on an annual basis. Like, where's the annual and quarterly planning version, the family version of that? Are we looking together towards a future that we're creating together? Because if we're not creating something together, it's more likely that we start to move in different directions.
Mm.
And I don't think that's meant to be. I think the reason marriages exist is that we can come together and create something together. You talk about an enduring, in business, I want to create enduring great companies. Well, I want something much, much more meaningful, more significant than that in my family life. I want an enduring family that matters, right? That is creating responsible adults that are going off and having a lot of fulfillment in their life and doing good, right? So there's all these really cool things that you can do in a family setting. Like any endeavor worth doing, if we want to create something meaningful, we have to be intentional. And so I would encourage life partners or husbands and wives or spouses or whatever the right term. If you're with somebody and you want to do something together, then you have to be intentional about what you're going to create together. It's not going to happen by default. We don't just trip our way to working together towards something meaningful. We have to like say we're going there together, and then set up our life in a way that we're moving that direction together.
I heard this description some time ago of oxen, where oxen are incredibly powerful creatures. I once got to train calves to be oxen down in Texas once, training them to use a yoke together. And it's striking that when you have two calves in a yoke, which is that wooden thing that goes across their neck so they can pull a heavy weight,
Yeah.
that if they're working in the same direction, even I was working with one calf was 8 months, one calf was 10 months, young creatures, but huge and very powerful. When they're working in the same direction, they're enormously powerful, even under a year old. But as soon as one decides it would rather be eating grass or looking over here or pulling anywhere other than the exact same direction as its partner, suddenly what you have is a frustrating mess, not getting anything done. And I love your idea.
It's a great analogy. Yeah. When we're yoked together, especially if we're equally yoked, there's a lot that we can accomplish. And the sad part, Brian, and you're in this wonderful phase of, we just got married a couple months ago, and people don't get married because they don't like each other. They get married because they love each other and they have all these dreams of, and even if those dreams didn't start out to be, we have these dreams together, there's still enough like for the other person that there's a basis for creating dreams together and pursuing those together. And I see too many couples neglect the nourishment of that relationship. It's sort of like, yeah, I'm not interested in being yoked with that person as much anymore. And so time spent together doing things that you like to do together is important. Caring about what the other person cares about, caring about the other person's comfort. If I would say one magical thing that we can do, any of us can do in our respective relationships, especially if we want them at lasting 25 years or more, is to just stop thinking about your own comfort and think about, how do I make that other person happy? How do I make that other person comfortable? And I found that's been the key to a happy marriage, at least in my case. And that doesn't mean she doesn't care at all about things that matter to me. It just means my whole focus is, how is she doing? What can I do to help her?
Mhm.
And when I'm in that place, things seem to work out pretty well.
I have an uncomfortable life hack, which is from time to time, ask your spouse, what do I do that annoys you? And then wait. And then wait for them to say something. And if they can't think of anything, think of, what do I do that annoys you just a little bit? The life would be a little bit sweeter if I didn't do this thing. And just find out, because we end up so used to what our normal life looks like. But if we can take away those little things, put this thing away in that way instead of the other way, make little tweaks. If you're looking at a lifelong thing, which you've been together 25 years, incredible. It was about 4 years ago that I met my now wife. And in 4 years, we got to learn a lot about changing how we operate just a little bit, just to make it a little bit smoother, a bit more comfortable. And it just creates this sweetness every day.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Yep, we should be doing that sort of couple
Mhm.
inventory kind of
Great
stuff.
word, great word. Well, it brings me to how much of this is related to your entrepreneurial work, because you work with teams with elite entrepreneurs, and helping teams work together and helping spouses work together. There's some similarities, not the same. Some similarities, though.
Absolutely.
For folks who love your perspective, Brett, and maybe they're in business and they think, wow, I want someone who's that kind of thoughtful, helping me get from 1 million to 10 million or wherever you're trying to get to. Where's a great place for people to go to learn more about you?
Thank you for that question. They can go to growwithelite.com. GROW with, right? WITH, elite, ELITE. Growwithelite.com is where you'll find all of our stuff. And you're right, whether we're talking about personal effectiveness or organizational effectiveness, the principles are the same. We're talking about building trust in our business versus building trust in our marriage or our family. The principles are the same.
Well, I would add to that. You talked about building trust with yourself, that you said you start every day the same way, and maybe
Yeah.
it's just 25 minutes, but that you always start your day with prayer and reflection and studying the works that will help you create the life you want. And that building that
Yes.
trust with yourself is what enables you to weather those storms, whether it's with your wife, your kids, your work, your community, your church, anything. Because you know that no matter what happens today, tomorrow, you know what's going to happen when you wake up. because you made that promise to yourself and you've kept it for decades. So you have this foundation. And as business owners, that's part of the thing. We are recording this right before Thanksgiving. And there was a time many years ago when I was back in college and I was working with a buddy on trying to make a business happen. And I ended up writing a bunch of code kind of stuff over Thanksgiving holiday when I was home from college for Thanksgiving. And afterwards, I got back to college. And of course, the business ended up not doing particularly well, as things do when you're in college. But I remember thinking, wow, instead of seeing my family over Thanksgiving, I was on a computer screen trying to go hustle and make this money and make this business work. And I really didn't like that in retrospect. I hadn't kept that commitment to my family, which at the time I didn't understand and I didn't grasp really what that balance looks like.
Yeah, it's tough. And that's why I think as we get older, we see life lessons that help us see things maybe a little more clearly than when we're young. At least that's what it was like for me. So
Yeah.
certainly would give myself a little grace and understanding if I were you. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's different now. You see it differently.
I definitely see it differently. That keeping promises to yourself enables you to keep promises to your spouse, enables you to keep promises to your business and your clients and everyone else.
Yeah,
Brett, thank you so much
totally agree.
for sharing your perspective on the show. Folks, it's growwithelite.com, ELITE, to go dig into what Brett can do for your company. Brett, thanks for being on the show.
It was a lot of fun, Brian. Thanks.